Hello everyone, my name is Ada Ahmadi and this is my research project for Sociology 2210. For this deviance research study, I wanted to pick a topic that I had absolutely no prior knowledge about. I was looking for something modern, something that exists because of the internet, and something that represents a subculture that isn't part of mainstream conversations. And that's how I stumbled upon the incel movement. It fascinated me because it's a digital-based subculture, one that has grown entirely online and yet has serious real-world implications. I was shocked that I'd never heard about it before, especially considering how much it shapes the major events. So, what does the term incel mean? Incel stands for involuntary celibates. Incels are typically heterosexual men who feel that they are unable to attract romantic or sexual partners through no fault of their own. What makes themselves different from people who are simply single is the way they process and react to their situation. They don't just feel unlucky in love, they feel victimized. They believe that women are to blame for their loneliness and that society unfairly favors certain kinds of men while leaving others behind. This perception fuels a lot of anger, entitlement, and resentment. It's not about seeking connection, it's about demanding it and blaming others when it's not given. What I found interesting and ironic about the history of the incel movement is that the term incel was originally coined by a Canadian woman in the early 1990s. She created an online support group for people of all genders who struggled with forming romantic or sexual relationship. It was supposed to be a space for empathy, support, and healing, but over the years, especially with the rise of anonymous online forums, the movement was hijacked by disillusioned men. The original purpose was lost and the group dynamic shifted dramatically from mutual support to mutual bitterness. What was once inclusive and caring became exclusive and toxic. The belief system that incels follow is rigid and deeply pessimistic. They believe that only a small group of men, who they call Chads, have access to women. Chads are usually described as tall, muscular, attractive, and confident. Incel ideology paints women referred to as Stacies as shallow and only pursuing Chads. It's a belief that completely dismisses personality, values, or emotional connection. According to this worldview, if you're not born genetically gifted or socially dominant, you'll never succeed romantically. This creates a binary view of the world, where you're either a winner or a loser. Losers are doomed by default. And this is how the internet ends up turning lonely men into extremists through the radicalization process, gradual descent, how isolation is amplified, where these digital spaces replace real social interaction, deepening feelings of loneliness and isolation. From isolation, they go to online forums, which leads to the black pill mentality, which we'll talk about a little bit later, leading on to hate and violence. So here I have defined what we have learned so far about deviance in our class. Deviance is relative, if there's a social construction aspect to it, there's norms, social controls, power, and authority. And of course, there are different groups that define deviance, like our family and parental authority, governments and legal institution, religious institution, and also the mass media. Here's a little word cloud that I created with different words that emphasize why incels don't see themselves as wrong in their ideology. So they have block goals, which end up leading to deviant paths. Their block goals are their unmet relationship expectations, their failure to integrate into society, sense of entitlement and violence, and escalation to extremist ideology. This is what happens to an individual when they feel that society has defined them and put them as part of a marginalized group. There's stigmatization, increased social isolation, stereotyping, and there is also the oversimplification of issues, at least an oversimplified narrative that ignores individual experiences. A couple of listed here are some of the incel beliefs that justify their use of violence. And this slide also goes over the subculture for rebellion. There's the rejection of mainstream norms, defiance against traditional masculinity, radicalization and extreme views, and rebellion through digital platforms. These digital platforms do have offline consequences. While these online platforms allow them to find like-minded individuals, it also helps them to reinforce and intensify their deviant beliefs. These intensify through the normalization of violent ideologies, and also there is an intersectionality of masculinity, mental health, and the internet culture. Listed out here on this slide are certain incidences that I learned about through my research that I was not even aware that were tied to the deviant to this movement. So the most important one to call out is in 2014, Elliot Rodger killed 6 individuals and injured 14, leaving behind a 137-page manifesto that he blamed women and sexually attractive men on his actions. So where is the public reaction and the media frenzy? There is intense media coverage, always focusing on the violent events that are lead to incels, mass shootings, and certain attacks that we were not even aware were part of the incel movement. There's also the sensationalist headlines, which seek to amplify fear and misunderstanding. There have been sanctions for these incel deviant groups. Online platforms have banned certain groups and websites, and there's been censorship as well. There's also been government level legislation as well as community backlash on these groups. When considering the incels, I wanted to delve into whether they would be called both a deviant or a terror group. And after reading both, I can see that there obviously evidence of deviance, and they are a terror group because they are rising through globalization and the impact of the internet and becoming interwoven throughout the internet subculture. So, what are the next steps in prevention and education? I think one of the things that we could do is to address the root cause of mental health and masculinity, how masculinity sometimes is toxic. There is the combating online radicalization through regulations and education, as well as more public awareness on the group. So, in conclusion, what I have learned about this movement is it's deeply concerning. It's a subculture that underscores the dangers of online radicalization and toxic masculinity. By viewing women as objects of resentment and framing their own struggles as a societal injustice, incels create an echo chamber that promotes further isolation and anger. Understanding how these communities function is crucial in addressing the psychological and social risks they present, and it calls for a broader societal response that includes mental health prevention, challenges to gender inequality, and proactive online monitoring.